Are women embarrassed of their boyfriends? I've definitely experienced this myself. I definitely think it's true that a lot of young women are embarrassed of their boyfriends today, and Vogue seems to agree. They wrote an article talking about this, and now a lot of people are talking about it online. And today, I'm going to be doing a reaction to Alice Capella. So I've not yet seen this video. I wanted to react sort of organically along with you, and I want to give some of my initial thoughts before I see it. So just from the title, just from seeing the title of the article from the video, women are indeed embarrassed of their girlfriends, and it absolutely is not a surprise. Like I said, this is something I've experienced personally, but this being a cultural phenomenon is not a surprise at all to me. And I would put it down to the fact that women have been told, the young women have been told their whole lives that, they don't need men in their lives. They shouldn't rely on them in any degree, to any degree at all. That for a woman to value a man is seen as weakness. For a woman to love a man and see him as deeply important and valuable in her life, that's considered weakness now. It's considered shameful for a woman to be like that. And yeah, what a surprise. What a surprise that a lot of young women would not want to tell people that they have a boyfriend, because being strong and independent in the feminist term of that, in the term of independence, is considered virtuous, not just cool or, desirable or something. It's considered virtuous. It's, directly tied with your sense of self-esteem as a woman to proclaim yourself as uncaring about love, to be indifferent or even scornful towards it. So before having seen the video, that's what I would say, that's what it comes down to. So with that said, let's jump right in.
Today I'm going to be talking about the recent Vogue article that went absolutely viral. Is having a boyfriend embarrassing now? It's eclectic, to say the least, but I'm interested in a lot of things, so just like you, my dear viewer. My name's Alice. Welcome back to my channel. The main argument of this piece is that the author perceives a trend where women are hiding their boyfriends from photos and stories. They don't speak about their boyfriends that much. The reason behind this is a fear to be perceived as, let's call it this way, a normie. In that case, it means a woman who cares too much about relationships, about having a boyfriend and having her social life revolve around that boyfriend. In other words, a woman who goes along with societal norms around womanhood. So that's not cool, the author argues. What's perceived as cool now is to be independent from one's relationship to a man, to not show the man, to not brag about the man, etc., etc. Now, before we get to
Yeah, so it's funny that she's saying this at the beginning of the video, but that to me, that's it. Like she could just end the video right now. That's it. That women believe that it's backward, wrong, shameful to value a man, to value love, and see a romantic relationship as something to care about and invest in. And that's it, everybody. Case closed. And the video's over. See you guys next week. I don't know what else she could talk about at this point. I mean, that's it.
Now let's move on to the content. I'll start with the title, Is Having a Boyfriend Embarrassing? That title is polemical, it's satirical. A lot of people reacted to it by making fun videos or tweets saying things like, quote, Vogue is validating my lifestyle, which matches the ironical tone of the article. You see, it's polemical for the sake of initiating discourse, and let's be honest, it was successful at this. Now, despite the irony and the polemical tone, I still think it's interesting to engage with a piece like this. In the past couple of months, I've seen the word heteropessimism appear a lot in op-eds and Substack articles. Others prefer the term heterofatalism. I've actually used that term myself critically in my own work, and it's mentioned in this article as well. Heterofatalism is defined as the performative disaffiliations with heterosexuality, usually expressed through regret, embarrassment, or hopelessness about straight experiences. While the term sounds fancy and academic, the reality is that it's something most heterosexuals have felt at some point in their lives.
Yeah, so something that I think is very significant that a lot of people don't point out is noticing the state of a culture depending on how they conceptualize life. And how you look at that is, of course, by looking at the dictionary, at the words that they're coming out with to use to describe how people feel about life. And in the past, 10 to 15 years, we've been seeing a lot of new terms coming out that are purely designed to create shame and despair around our bodies, around sex, around desire, around really just anything to do with men and women getting along. I mean, from terms like mansplaining, manspreading, toxic masculinity, heterofatalism, whatever the other one was. We've had terms like, objectification being used to mean, you're by a man desiring a woman sexually, that's, turning her into a sex object. You're dehumanizing that person. So it's not just new words, but words being twisted to mean something else. Independence has now become to mean, a woman who doesn't care about a man, who's spiritually independent, as opposed to what independence used to mean, which was that you were financially or legally considered your own entity. You were independent. You were living on your own. You were supporting yourself. But now it means you are spiritually deprived. You are cut off. You're seen as virtuous because of the lack of a value that you have. You are independent of something good, which is, valuing someone in your life, caring about someone, being in a relationship. So that's something that I think is really important. Orwell talks about this in 1984, not explicitly, but it's just sort of part of that universe of how concepts are used to shape how people see the world. And we see that a lot these days because, when you have someone who is incorrect, when their views are wrong, they necessarily have to shape how you see the world in order to twist how you conceptualize things, in order to get you to see the way they see things. That's just been rampant for the past 10, 15 years. But my ultimate point is all these terms are geared toward creating shame around the body, creating shame around connection between men and women, making men feel ashamed of their own bodies, making men feel ashamed of asserting themselves romantically. We can't even ask women out anymore not because someone is physically stopping us, but because we stop ourselves. And women do the same for caring about men because, again, no one's stopping them. They're stopping themselves. It's really, really evil and fucked up. But that's the modern world.
The author speaks about women purposely hiding their boyfriends out of embarrassment, meaning the boyfriend is still there, just unseen. He's not on Instagram stories or posts. In real life, he's not talked about much, not necessarily shown. Maybe he's not good enough. Maybe he doesn't say the right things or look the right way. To put it simply, he's seen as potential damage for a woman's reputation. The author mentioned...
Okay, so there's a couple things going on here. We're not talking about a small subset of girls who happen to be in a relationship they shouldn't be in with a guy that they're, who's not a very good guy. He's not very smart. He's not very ambitious. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a widespread issue that we're seeing among loads of young women where they feel embarrassed to be in a relationship as such, right? It has nothing to do with, maybe he doesn't present himself well. No, it's women are embarrassed to be in relationships. That's the issue. That's the problem. And secondly, it kind of goes to prove the point that this is a culture-wide issue, to say that a lot of women fear their reputation being damaged by saying that they're in a relationship.
Mentions that some female influencers and author contributor, I believe, have lost followers after posting about their boyfriends, implying that the existence of a boyfriend made them lose appeal to, I assume, a predominantly female audience. By highlighting this, the author implies that the influencers, the writers, have lost value. They weren't perceived as cool. In that sense, the relationship with the man is viewed through the lens of what it can bring or take away from someone in terms of social value.
Yeah, so this is just furthering the point that it's loads of young women see it as something shameful, disgraceful, not just uncool in the sense of you're wearing, out of season clothing or something like that, but there's something spiritually wrong with you. It's disgusting You don't want that person on your feed. Ugh, yuck. This person has a boyfriend, yuck. I don't want to look at that person.
We could say that's a very transactional view of relationships. My first reaction to the piece was, gosh, should we really make our relationships with men so transactional? A matter of increased or decreased social value? A matter of bragging versus hiding? And then I remembered, relationships have always been somewhat transactional. Back in the days, women were literally transferred from father to husband, and that transaction was calculated to enhance the reputation, to enhance the economic status of both the family and the future husband. Today, those transactions aren't as obvious, but still, when you look at the social classes of people who marry, who date, there are strong correlations. You tend to date someone, you tend to marry someone of the same social class. So there is definitely an economic, financial aspect to how we do relationships. This article just felt like the counterpart to how men have viewed women for so long, as social assets to present to family or friends to gain social points. It's in those few seconds following the introduction of the girlfriend that a man's social value is determined. If the girlfriend is good looking enough, she passes the test. Friends shake hands, an extra wink might be included. So what is she, like a 7 out of 10? I don't know if...
All right, so there's a lot going on here. So she brought up the traditions of aristocracy hundreds of years ago. She's saying that men only see women as a commodity nowadays, that when we go out to find a girlfriend, we're only thinking of them in terms of social status increases, that somehow my life will be better at work because I have a hot girlfriend or something like that. I don't know. And also, when my friends congratulate me when I get into a relationship, it's because she's only seen as a commodity. I mean, what is she even implying here? That if I get a girlfriend and I'm really happy with her, and oh yeah, she's wonderful, she's lovely, she's a really smart, we talk all the time about really great stuff, I love spending time with her, and my friends should what should they do? Not care? Not be like, oh great, that's wonderful. Should they not be happy for me? What is she talking about? So yeah, bringing up, this is just women getting back at how women were treated in the past is feminist rewriting of history bullshit. It's partially true that happened, but it's also really true that a lot of people cared about each other in the past, cared very much about each other. That doesn't mean that every single marriage was only for love, and it doesn't mean that there wasn't, especially in the aristocracy, people marrying each other for aristocratic reasons, money, land, all sorts of stuff like that. But it's dropping a lot of context of what actually happened in the past. Lots of people would get married and fall in love after, the arrangement. It's so easy for people today to, with our views of how things should be, to look down on the way things used to be, whereas, back in the day, like, people would get married because of, land, title, status, and stuff like that. That was sort of a necessity of life, in a way. I'm not saying that was right, necessarily. I'm just saying that's just how people saw it. Like, it's not like it was either love or the exchange of titles, and you could only have one or the other. Because that's a very modern narrative about, relationships are transactional or they're for love. But, like, every relationship is transactional. Every relationship, you're transacting something, even if it's, love, time, emotional energy. Spiritual exchange is a transaction in a sense. And the only reason you would be transacting money, the only reason you'd be doing that is because you care about this person and you want them in your life. So you can't separate those two things. It's a very modern narrative that people are pushing, that it's either one or the other, but that's just, all you're gonna do is screw yourself if you see it that way. That you can either see women as just prostitutes to pay for their access to sex. That's the only thing I can think of. If you strip away every single spiritual value from a relationship, then I guess, all women just become potential prostitutes. Or you can love them and never never buy them dinner, I guess. Never get married, never have any exchange, never have a material exchange. Very strange narrative, very confusing. But ultimately, why the hell is she bringing any of this up anyway? This is just, honestly, this is just like feminist narrative nonsense. Like, this is not how men view women. This is not the narrative now. Like, sure, maybe in India, where there's still arranged marriages, but that's not what we're talking about. That's not the issue. We're talking about young, very, very privileged women in the West who have the whole world at their feet, who have never in their life ever experienced what relationships were like 500 years ago in the aristocracy. That's not the problem. That's not the context. That's not what we're talking about. I mean, maybe Russian oligarchs operate that way, but like, that's not what we're talking about. Anyway.
If you know this, but there's a theory in psychoanalysis. It's been developed by Sedgwick, and it argues that heterosexual male relationships often depend on repressed or displaced homosexual desire.
What is she talking about? How is this relevant at all? And also, I'm so sick to death of this stupid narrative that Frodo and Sam were actually giving it to each other on the hills of Mount Doom.
Do you understand? A puff, a fairy, a queer, a queen, fudge packer, uphill gardener, fruit-picking sodomite.
He's gay.
As a bloody Christmas tree.
Oh man. See, the same people who complain that men are cagey and closed off emotionally and don't talk about how they're feeling and don't talk to their friends about how much they mean to each other will also say shit like this when they do finally open up. Oh man, I'm tired, so sick and tired of this narrative.
Usually redirected into competition, camaraderie, or validation.
Then there's the rare occasion when two teammates are really close friends and one of them randomly hits the other's ass super hard. It means, damn, your cheeks are looking nice today.
To come up with this theory, she looked at a wide range of cultural productions across time and came up with the idea that, yeah, hetero men aren't actually strictly hetero.
After all these years, still close.
If we accept this theory, then the girlfriend becomes just another trophy to increase one's social value among...
Yeah, she's really pushing hard into this narrative, spending a lot of time on it. And I understand that she's talking about an article and that it probably says all of this in the article, and she's spending time talking about this because it says it in the article. I understand that, and so my criticism lies on both. But she is spending a lot of time on this, and I just, it's really strange. Like, we're here to talk about how women are behaving, and now we're talking about how men all want to take it up the ass. Like, what are we talking about? I don't know if people do this anymore, but when I was growing up, a lot of people would make jokes, well, young guys would make jokes at all the young women who would be with their friends, going, having a sleepover at their friend's place, and the guys would make lewd, lesbotic jokes about that. They'd say, ooh, you're gonna pillow fight naked with each other or whatever, it's make stupid jokes like that.
In which it is statistically probable that private acts of lesboid love have been committed.
And you know what? The women didn't appreciate that. Yeah, crazy, I know. And it turns out doing the exact same thing to guys don't really appreciate that either. It doesn't mean that those women hate lesbians, and it doesn't mean that guys hate homosexuals. It's just that we're not. Like, if I tell my friend that I love him, it doesn't mean that I really want to give it to him.
He's gay.
As a bloody Christmas tree.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's just, again, like I was saying earlier, there's just so much effort on attacking people's ability to feel comfortable caring about each other, right? Because caring, valuing each other, being in a relationship, like these are all actions that we take. It means telling people how you feel. It means allowing yourself to feel comfortable feeling those feelings. And today, there's so much effort on attacking the whole process of our ability, men and women's ability to have a relationship, to care about each other. Yeah, and the same thing goes with this whole narrative of, men do or used to, only have women for social value or social status, so therefore women can do it too, or whatever. That's just all that's doing is just trying to perpetuate our inability to have relationships together. And also, just a side note, that's a logical fallacy. I think it's two, actually. The tu quoque fallacy and the two wrongs make a right fallacy. Correct me if I'm wrong, or if there are other fallacies.
To please your male friends. So I wondered, isn't that Vogue article implying the same thing, but the other way around? Yes and no. You see, in the case described by the article, the quality of the boyfriend isn't what's being debated. It's his mere existence that is deemed uncool. Not having a boyfriend or not centering your boyfriend signals a rejection of gendered norms,
Yes, that's exactly it.
rejection of the culture most Gen Z and millennial women were brought up in, with, Disney love stories and damsels in distress. It's countercultural not to center your life around your boyfriend, and the Vogue article highlights that. But, and that's where my criticism really begins.
Okay, we'll get to her criticism here in just a second. I just want to talk about this idea of not being proud of being with your boyfriend, not valuing relationships, going along with the feminist narrative is counterculture. I hate that because it's totally 100% not true. So let me talk to you about culture. This is a very misunderstood idea, but a culture is the dominant ideas in a specific time and place. It's the ideas that people predominantly accept and operate on every day, or the philosophic zeitgeist of a time and place. So the best way that you can look at what a culture is by looking at what is ideologically being created and pushed. So you want to look at intellectual sources, right? Colleges, universities, people who are considered top thinkers, people who are considered intelligent, forward thinking. You want to be looking at the artists, the people who are considered to be forward thinking artists, who are pushing the envelope, pushing the edge of what we think is appropriate. People who are not seen as traditional, but rather seen as moving the needle forward. So for instance, what isn't part of the culture is what is considered to be old, traditional, outdated, irrelevant in terms of what is cool. It's the opposite of cool. It's the opposite of what's happening, what the young kids think is trendy and, intriguing and fun and enticing. So the idea of relationships being meaningful and a woman caring deeply about a man and loving the fact that she's in a relationship, romance. This is not what all the top intellectuals are pushing and advocating. This is not what the major artists are talking about. This is not what we see major celebrities endorsing. This is not what we hear about from, major intellectual sources. What we consider to be cool, what we consider to be pushing the envelope. What we consider to be cool and pushing the envelope is feminism, women being totally cut off from men, open relationships, non-monogamy, all this kind of stuff. What's considered old, outdated, downplayed in every regard by all the intellectual sources out there right now is the idea of a relationship, of a woman caring about a man, and about a man dedicating himself to her. And she specifically brought up Disney movies because I can tell you what is considered cool among young girls, and what I saw growing up, was to ridicule the idea of being the princess, of being a woman who likes the prince, who is waiting for the prince, who wants to be in a relationship. And when Frozen came out in 2013 or something, 2012? Frozen came out and broke the mold of the Disney movie. It showed, instead of love and romance being very important, it showed it as secondary, as unimportant, as not really what young girls should be seeing as an important value in life. It wasn't rejected by people. It resonated with everyone. It resonated with parents, with critics, with intellectual, leaders who heralded heralded it as forward-thinking, as brave, as breaking the tired, outdated mold of, the old Disney way of portraying love as being important. People were happy to see it. It goes to show you that the idea of romance, of love being important, of a woman finding a man desirable and seeing love as important, was already old and not culturally relevant. It was already integrated into the culture at that time, that the idea that a woman rejecting love, rejecting men, was seen as brave and noble. People who wanted to be seen as cool, cutting edge, they loved the message of Frozen, which was, true love is not romantic love. True love is something else. It's familial, it's something else. It was a clear and deliberate attack on, the idea that a romantic love is something important in life. It was diminishing that as a value for all the children, especially young women. And that was considered cool. That was considered cutting edge. And it still is. So it's fucking stupid to say that, all these bullring, blue-haired feminists who go around screaming at men that, they don't care about men, that they're counterculture? No. What are you talking about? That is the culture. That's the culture that I've grown. I'm 33, and that's the culture I grew up in. That's the way it's been basically my whole life. And you hear it all the time. The people who are in the culture, pushing the culture, they love to think of themselves as counterculture. They love to think of themselves as being the outcasts and the rebels, but they're not. They're not. They are the culture. They are the establishment. So what she's noting here, it's true in how it's perceived. People do perceive not giving a fuck about anything as being counterculture. I don't want my harshness to come off as if I'm attacking Alice here. I'm not. I just care very much about this topic because I see the damage it does to our lives. But so Alice is correct in pointing out this is how people perceive it. But I just really wanted to make it clear about what a culture is and how absolutely false it is. This idea that all the people who are the culture are counterculture. It's not true.
I think this piece is missing the bigger picture. And let's be honest, I'm not expecting Vogue to provide a full analysis of the phenomenon it describes. That's not what Vogue is known for, and that's fine. Vogue's core audience is middle and upper class young women who want to know what is culturally relevant and what's not. That's the target audience. That's what we should expect. And again, that's fine. This isn't the criticism. The criticism is coming soon. The reason why I'm making this video is because the conversation about boyfriends being embarrassing has expanded beyond the usual Vogue demographic. It has entered public discourse. And it now feels important to me that the analysis provided in this article isn't the only way people look at this phenomenon, because once again, I think it's missing the bigger picture. So now that the disclaimers is done, what is the bigger picture? Well, let's look at one of the argument examples given in the article, where influencers, writers have lost followers after revealing their boyfriends online. The author uses this as an argument that boyfriends are in fact embarrassing. But personally, when I saw this, I thought about something quite different. You see, influencing is a job, and losing followers isn't just an inconvenience. It has real financial consequences. There is pressure on influencers to make sure their numbers go up. For lifestyle influencers, that means putting forward a version of themselves that's culturally relevant. One example is vlogger and influencer Moya Mohini, who once said in a video a year or so after lockdown that since she had stopped centering content around being alone in her lockdown space and started going out and seeing people again, she had received comments from viewers missing the quote old Moya, the quote lockdown Moya. The implication was that Moya should tailor her content toward a specific lifestyle, introverted, lonely, instead of the one she truly wanted, extroverted, outdoorsy, social. If you watch lifestyle content, you know how popular the living alone videos are. The solo date with myself, solo travel, living alone diaries, they are so popular. I made a video about it a while back. But as you watch those videos, that content, it doesn't take too long to realize that the vlogger isn't actually alone. Sometimes they live with roommates, a partner, sometimes they see friends friends during the day, but those social bits are kept to a minimum. And there's an incentive to present yourself as living alone to, I assume, preserve that special bond with the viewer who has, without realizing it, developed a parasocial relationship with you, a kind of dependency on you as a person, creator, product. So going back to Moya, she still uses the aesthetic of loneliness. She nevertheless reminded fans that she likes hanging out with people as much as she likes being by herself. In other words, she has a life outside you, the viewer, the consumer of her content. She's dependent on us for money, that's for sure, but she's not dependent on us emotionally. While Moya doesn't have anything to do with the boyfriend thing, her fans' disappointments at her post-lockdown social life is, to me, very similar to fans unfollowing creators who show their boyfriends. There is an expectation that influencers belong to us. They depend on us for money, and in return, we act like mini bosses, expecting them to devote all their attention to us, to prioritize us, to meet our needs. Again, the creator economy is an industry with workers, business owners, consumers, and sponsors. And what happens in the creator economy also happens in traditional workplaces. Because
I see what she's saying, and it is true that like some very, very specific creators who have curated an audience who create that weird parasocial bond of like, ooh, this lady's living the alone life or whatever. I can see that. I can sort of see that as being true. I don't know. I don't really see that as being like what this article's pointing out. As I've said, I've seen and experienced personally women who are not proud to talk about the fact that they're in a relationship, won't mention it, will downplay it. Maybe embarrassment might not quite be the extent of what they feel, but there's definitely a trend I've seen throughout my life of girls who just don't feel like it would be a positive thing to bring up about themselves, or they feel like it would be irrelevant to bring it up. Again, it's what's at the core of that is the sense of shame about being in a relationship, about a woman caring about a man as being a sign of weakness or a sign of dependency. Let's see what else she has to say.
As women are socialized to care for others and tend to have more relationships than men, and by relationships I mean friendships, etc., well, they constantly have to prove their dedication to work. Men's dedication to work is never really questioned. Career success is seen as a man's true purpose, so we believe that men will always prioritize work over relationships. Women, on the other hand, are under scrutiny. They can be asked during interviews about their relationship status, or if they plan on having kids. As workers, women are sometimes shamed by managers when they announce a pregnancy, the implication being that they are selfish for letting their co-workers down and prioritizing their desire to have a child. I think it's important to...
Yeah, I mean, it is messed up to shame a woman for being in a relationship and actually wanting to be part of that. I know I haven't heard everything she has to say about this quite yet, but there is definitely a narrative pushing hard for women to go into careers and to value only careers and oh fuck relationships, and you're a backward idiot woman who's dependent on a man for your sense of self-worth if you go into a relationship and care about a relationship, and you're wasting your life if you don't dedicate yourself to a career. But also something very important to keep in mind, men and women are different. Men are psychologically geared toward productivity. It is very important for a man's sense of self-esteem and his happiness to be productive, because his body is built that way, and because of that, his psychology is built that way. Women are not built that way, and it's not as important for a woman's self-esteem and her happiness to be productive in the way it is for a man. And this is what feminism pushes really hard, is this idea that it's unacceptable for men and women to be different, to acknowledge the fact that we're different. Women do not feel comfortable being women, being themselves. But I think the big picture here actually is that the pressure isn't simply from the workplace of, ooh, are you gonna get pregnant? It's not just that, it's the pressure is also for the woman to have a career, not just in the general sense, but to like make that her primary in life, which I don't think is healthy. I think it's very unnaturally pressed upon women now There's a lot of shame for them to go into a relationship and a lot of shame for them to not go into a career in the way a man would, to make it his primary or her primary as well. And she's wasting her life unless she's, a manager in some corporate whatever. Very stupid.
Keep that in mind when we look at influencers losing followers after showing their boyfriends, or women hiding their boyfriends altogether. To me, it's not just a matter of embarrassment or reclaiming agency against gender norms. I'm sure there's some of that, but I want us to also look at the fact that this is something we see in traditional workplaces, pressure put on women to separate their emotional and social lives from their work, to constantly reassure their bosses, all their viewers, that they're fully dedicated to them. So maybe the real question isn't whether having a boyfriend is embarrassing, but why women still feel the need to prove their personal lives don't interfere with their worth, whether that's at work, online, or in relationships. You see, when I read that article for the first time, I didn't really see women being embarrassed about their boyfriends. I saw women trying to protect something, their image, their privacy, or maybe their sense of self in a world where everything is content.
Well, hang on a minute. So she said, I don't think it's that women are embarrassed, it's that they're trying to protect their image. Isn't that the same thing? Why are women trying to protect their image? Could it be because they're ashamed? Someone who goes to protect their image about something, particularly an enormously important value in their life, is ultimately not going to give a shit about what other people think. And if they do, then that's called being embarrassed about that value. Let me just give you an example about, let's take men and women out of the equation here. Like if I have a friend, I do have a friend who works with his hands. He's a manual labor guy, blue collar, works his butt off. And let's say I have a group of tech bros. They're all very wealthy, they work in tech, they've never worked with their hands in their lives. Let's say they're having a party and I bring my blue collar worker friend with me to go hang out with him. And they're all very pretentious toward him. They're all looking down on him. They see him as this second-class citizen Neanderthal. If I were then to be concerned about my image with the tech bros above the fact that my friend here is my friend, that would be because I'm embarrassed about him being my friend. I would be embarrassed about my association with him. To not be embarrassed about him and to hold that value as primary to me would be to say, fuck you guys. You guys are pretentious assholes. I don't want to hang out with you anymore. I don't want to be friends with someone who's going to look down on somebody because they work with their hands or something. So she gave here a but statement of this is, we think that girlfriends are embarrassed, women are embarrassed of their boyfriends, but actually it's more about caring about how you look and caring about the image that having a boyfriend has. That's the same thing. That's the same thing. They're embarrassed about having a boyfriend because they feel that it affects their image. They feel like people will look down on them for having a boyfriend, and they value that more than their boyfriend. It's the same thing. Editor Eric here, and I just want to say everything I just said in response to Alice is not 100% addressing what she said. I think there's two distinct contexts that she isn't including together that I don't think should be included. So what I was addressing is what I think is the main issue, the main problem, the main context of the whole article and dilemma that people are talking about, which is a kind of shame that young women feel concerning having a boyfriend, which is a lot of what she addressed primarily at the beginning of the video. But another thing that she did address is women who are, they feel like their employer might hold it against them if they're in a relationship unfairly. And I think that's a very understandable situation that a woman would be not totally transparent about her relationship if she felt like her income might be in jeopardy. So my example about the two friend groups, the pretentious friends and the blue-collar friend, that doesn't really apply to the second context about a woman who might have their income in jeopardy if their employer were to find out about their relationship status. But to me, those are two different contexts, right? You've got women who are just straight up ashamed of having a boyfriend. They think it's shameful to care about a man, versus a woman who, understandably, is worried about their income. You know, those are two different contexts. And what I was talking about in the video that you just watched is, the primary context, which is the trend that we see. Also, I promise I'm not going to go full Hamza.
I understand that this phenomenon can be viewed in many different ways, and, that's just my take on it. This take is probably influenced by my own experience as a content creator, careful about what and who I post online. And I think that's ultimately what this piece reveals, not just about influencers, but about how we all negotiate what we choose to share and what we choose to protect, and how those choices are influenced by a variety of factors we may or may not have control over. That's it for me. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, the conversation continues in the comment section. I'm really excited to hear about your takes on this.
All right, so that was it. And I think my final take is pretty similar to my initial take. We live in a culture that is twisting the way we conceive of relationships, the way we think about love and sex and our bodies. It's trying to shame us for caring about relationships at all, both on the side of men and women. And that's what this is. It's just yet another attack on the whole front of this war on love and relationships and sex and intimacy. So, I don't know, I mean, she said this herself actually in the beginning, not explicitly in the way I think I'm saying it, but she said, like, women feel like they're being normal, they're being traditional, they're being a kept woman or whatever by acknowledging their boyfriends. In other words, they're shamed for doing that. They feel ashamed of it. Now, I just want to make it very clear, I get pretty heated when I'm talking about this stuff, not because, I'm attacking Alice or anything like that. It's that I care very much about the subject matter, about relationships, about love, and connection. I mean, I see the enormous amount of damage that these types of ideas that circulate in our culture do. It's very real to me, and so I get heated about it. Well, let me know what you thought of this video. Let me know if you like reaction content from me, if I'm any good at it. I don't know, I've only done like 1 or 2 so far. I thought I'd give it another try. So let me know what you thought of it, and leave a comment below, definitely. And be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more, and I will definitely see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.